Welcome back to the JumpStart Sports Show. I'm Jason Kopp, one of your esteemed co-hosts. On the other side of me, to my left, we have my main man from Philadelphia, 5'10.5" on a
Not
good
quite.
day. 5'10", 3/4.
Not quite.
Two. I don't get math. Steven Shoemaker, welcome. How you doing?
Welcome back in. I'm doing good, Jay. Thanks for that intro. I needed that. It's been a slow day, but we got another episode here. Another great opportunity to talk some sports. I like the hat you were wearing, but then you slapped it off. Was it a Giants hat? Because if it was, I take back what I said. I didn't actually like it. I was just trying to be nice.
Oh, well, I appreciate you being nice. Yeah, it was Giants hat. Why am I wearing a Giants hat? Because we have a great episode for you guys today. We're going to be talking a lot about the NFL draft, kind of a recap, and why don't we jump in right here?
Yeah, so the results of the first round were, well, from our last episode, we were pretty goddamn wrong.
Yeah.
We weren't even close. So that's why we're not insiders, but
not yet.
I think it went as expected. Just kind of talking about the first pick, probably over the past 3 months or so, everyone thought it was going to be Aiden Hutchinson going to the Jags. And then what was it? Like, I don't know if you want to kind of explain a little bit what the switch up was, but about a week or two before the draft started, the lines completely jumped to Trayvon Walker being the first pick. And sure enough, he was.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. I actually said the wrong guy. I said Randy Gregory, I think, and I meant to say Alden Smith. But the GM of the Jaguars, Trent Baalke, has a history of drafting guys like that who are just like athletic freaks. And we touched on it a little bit. But he prefers to get like athletic freaks and hope that like the intangibles, translate to the next level. What was so interesting is, I feel like that Trayvon Walker was a lesser known guy at Georgia. He was still obviously an incredible defender, but he was a lesser known guy. He didn't really have much production. And then all of a sudden, like Peter Schrager from Good Morning Football came out with his mock, and that's when it kind of picked up a little bit of steam. He's just like, I heard rumblings that Trayvon Walker is going to go 1. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson seemed like the consensus since, in the collegiate season, he was the most dominant, but it's really weird that that Trayvon Walker was just so quick to, slide ahead of him with, like you said, within like a 2-week span. It's so weird.
Yeah, when you pick someone goes first overall, you would like to think there's someone who's going to make a big impact in the league. I don't know about right away, but you just look at the past first round picks, and sure enough, the Jags got the first pick 2 years in a row, and they go with Trevor Lawrence, and he didn't really do much last year. He's got a lot of room to improve, but he didn't really make that impact that they were looking for. I don't know if you want to point the finger at Trevor or if you want to point the finger at just the Jags being a terrible football team, but they're a team that's kind of relying on over these next several years stinking. I don't know if tanking is the right word, but just not being a good football team, racking up these first round picks. And, 5-10 years from now, hoping they're going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars that they were, 5 years ago or so when they went to the AFC Championship game and lost to the Patriots. I believe that was the same year the Philadelphia Eagles of Philadelphia won the Super Bowl, just to remind you. But
where are they from?
But that's just kind of what the Jags are in right now. They're in rebuilding mode, and Trayvon Walker was an absolute beast at Georgia, and hopefully he can bring that spark to the Jags defense that they need, because they have a pretty solid defense, a pretty solid foundation as it is. So,
yeah, it was. I think it was just kind of surprising. Leading up to the draft, the odds completely shifted, where Trayvon Walker was then favored, and so you had to understand that probably a lot of people were hearing the same things. But something that was crazy, I thought about the first round, and maybe we could just talk about some things that surprised you. Like something that surprised me was the quarterbacks. Like something that we all got wrong collectively, I feel like was
they were
just a slide, like
non-existent in the first round at all.
First 2 rounds, there was just the one with Kenny Pickett to the Steelers, and I felt really confident that just like last year, like Najee Harris was basically guaranteed to be a Steeler. I was like, oh, they kind of suck. Keeping that in. Malik Willis was going to be a Steeler. Sure enough, he slides to the end of round 3 to the Titans. It's really kind of interesting. I just thought that he had a lot of promise, at least in his intangibles, and he was mocked as high as number 2 to the Lions, and it's just the catastrophic fall of these quarterbacks was pretty crazy to me. I thought.
Yeah, they definitely slipped. I always had a feeling. I know in our mock draft, I don't think we sent we had Pickett probably going in the top 15. I think we had him going to Atlanta or something, and
Mhm.
sure enough, he goes to Pittsburgh, and I was honestly just so happy to see that. I think that was the most exciting part of the draft,
Yeah.
just knowing that he'll stay at home in Pittsburgh and he's going to a good football team. Mike Tomlin, um, that stat about how he's made the playoffs every year in his career. Is it something like that,
It's
or
it's he's never had a losing
he's
season.
never had a losing
I think.
season? Correct. Thanks for correcting me on that. But just putting Kenny Pickett in that type of offense, and I think he's gonna do great things for them. They might not be a playoff team just because of how tough that division is going to be with the Bengals and the Ravens, but I think he'll be just fine in Pittsburgh,
What do
especially
you
because he
think?
knows that field quite well.
Yeah, what's kind of cool about Kenny Pickett too is I didn't realize that it's like quite literally the same facility. You just take a door to the left, and it's you know the
Hmm.
Steelers, and a door to the right, or I think it might be the other way around, is the University of Pitt. But what do you make of the other quarterbacks? So you had like, and you had, besides from Malik Willis, who we kind of briefly touched on, Matt Corral was mocked to go in the first round, and you also had Desmond Ritter, who was like sliding up boards, and Desmond Ritter was the second quarterback taken to the Falcons, but I think also in the middle of the third round. What do you make of that slide? Do you think that it's more of like everyone kind of as a consensus realized that these quarterbacks aren't as good, or do you think it's that the NFL is kind of, maybe the evaluators are kind of learning that, I always think back to the Giants, obviously, in terms of like the difference in the quarterbacks that they've taken over the years. Kyle Lauletta was a fourth round pick. Davis Webb, I think, was also a fourth round pick. And it's ultimately, like I always thought, just kind of a waste where you could be using that for, like, it's pretty valuable draft capital. What do you make of that slide that these quarterbacks take? And is that kind of a realization from evaluators? Maybe there's value elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as fluent in college football as you are, but from what I do know, there's been a lot of talk just about next year's class having really strong quarterbacks, and
Mm,
there are several teams right now that are kind of on their last legs with their quarterback. For example, you look at the Titans. Ryan Tannehill has been very good for them, but he is getting older, and they needed someone to, have that backup role filled. And Malik Willis was the guy for that. I was kind of hesitant on him at first, just coming out of Liberty. He has a lot of talent, but I didn't look at
mhm,
him as being someone who's going to be an immediate, a quarterback who's going to make an immediate impact in the league. If you want to compare him to someone like Jalen Hurts, for example, he has a lot of talent, but
mm,
hasn't really made, what is this going to be his third season? He hasn't really made that impact yet. Malik Willis could be very similar to that, but there just weren't that many options in my opinion. I know Matt Corral was one of the top 3 choices, and I think there are some rumors of him having some off-field issues potentially. I don't know the exact
mhm,
reasons, but he slipped a lot because of that. Ritter slipped, and I just don't think when you have a first, second, and maybe even a third round pick, you want to be confident that whoever you're taking is going to make an impact coming into the season for you guys, even if they are just a young rookie. That's why draft picks are so valuable, and people and teams have been trading them like crazy
mhm.
because they're so important to the future of your team, and you need to be so careful with who you pick. And um, as I know, as an Eagles fan, our picks have not always been so great over the years. I don't know if you have any disappointing picks that the Giants have made over the years, but it just goes to show how important the draft is, and you really want to be smart with your picks. And if you're not a positive that one of these quarterbacks in this draft are gonna be a long term stud for you, it's not
Mhm.
worth taking that risk, in my opinion.
So what was the most surprising thing ultimately, like as an overarching, besides from the quarterbacks? Was there one thing in the first round, maybe a player, maybe a trade that was made that surprised you? Um, because there was a few things I thought that were like out of nowhere.
Yeah, there are definitely a couple. I don't know if this is true or not, but this could be the first draft ever where 2 cornerbacks went back to back. Um, we got this wrong. I think we had Sauce Gardner going third to the Texans, but it ended up being Derek Stingley. And you actually predicted that right on the money because you talked about how just coming out of LSU, all the experience he had guarding Jamar Chase, guarding Justin Jefferson. I don't know a whole lot about Stingley, but from the film I've watched of him, he's a stud. And it's tough when you're a good player because you get drafted to a bad
Yeah,
team, and doesn't matter how good you are. If you're on a bad team, sometimes there's only so much you can do. But that was
right.
kind of surprising to me, honestly, that Stingley went over
Sauce.
Sauce, and then Sauce went back to back, going to the Jets. The Jets absolutely killed this draft. They did an excellent job. But that was something that kind of caught my mind, was just cornerbacks going third and fourth right off the bat. I don't know if there were any other choices that the Texans and Jets, who are two other teams who are in the rebuilding process, could have taken. Maybe one of those offensive tackles in O'Conru or Evan Neal, but they took their shot, and on the secondary side of things, hopefully Stingley and Gardner turn out well for them. Unlike, I guess, the last example was Jeff Okudah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Jeff Okudah has not performed well since coming out of Ohio State. Whatever it was, 3 years ago now, maybe 4. No,
Something
3.
like that. 3.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good one though. I mean, I think, and we'll get to this in a little bit in terms of winners and losers, but I think what interested me the most was how there was so much fire or let's not fire. Sorry, there was a lot of smoke around the Debo news and how he wanted to get out and whatever. And supposedly the 49ers actually had multiple offers with the Jets number 10 pick plus more. And they also apparently had, I don't know if it was the number 2 pick, but they had a Lions first round pick offered to them plus. And they didn't pull the trigger. I thought that was surprising because then you have AJ Brown who gets traded to the Eagles for virtually nothing. And the Cardinals, who must have seen the DeAndre Hopkins news coming, they had to have to make that deal and get Hollywood Brown and reunite college teammates from Oklahoma. I thought that was pretty interesting as well. Those are probably the two that stand out to me the most. But I mean, you can't discount how weird it was that a guy who has no production in college at all, I think it was 6.5 sacks throughout his entire collegiate career it's part due to the scheme, but 6.5 sacks compared to 14 from Aiden Hutchinson, who was a Heisman finalist. I think it's a pretty interesting kind of dynamic there. So moving on to our next topic, I think this one is going to really hit home for us. Let me just put this baby back on. This hat is so sun-kissed.
That's pretty old. There's a lot of dust on it when you picked it out of your grandfather's closet.
Good one.
Got him.
My grandpa's in Florida. Joke's on you. Let's go over the Eagles and the Giants draft classes from this year. Do you want to start us off and just talk a little bit about the Eagles draft class, and then I'll chime in a little bit as well. But you, as the Eagles fans, I feel like you should start. Are you wearing a Chicago White Sox?
You got it right on the money, man.
What? Why are you wearing a Chicago White Sox hat?
There's a long story behind it. I don't really feel like getting into, but if you really care, I'll tell you about it some other time. But getting to the Eagles, when the draft was going on, I wasn't paying as much attention as I should have been, just because, for good reason, the Sixers were in their game 6, so I was heavily focused on that. I had the draft on in the background, but when I saw that they traded up to 13 with the Texans, my first thought immediately was they're trying to get Jameson Williams. They don't want him to slip. And then 12 comes around to the Lions and they take him. So I was thinking to myself, if he wasn't taken, I'm wondering if the Eagles would have taken Jameson Williams.
I don't think he was 13. The Eagles stayed at 15.
No, they stayed at 15.
They stayed at 15.
No, it was 13. They traded up to 13 with the Texans, and Howie Roseman, the GM, said they were trading up to 13 to take JD Davis, I believe his name is. Jordan Davis, I apologize. Jordan Davis out of Georgia, which is a great pick. He was an absolute stud at Georgia, and
Yeah, you're right.
they definitely needed help at the tackle position. So Jordan Davis, I think, was a great pick. And then they had another pick at 15 that they traded with the Texans, but obviously Jordan Davis was a great pick. And then just the shocking news of it was, I believe after they took Davis, I was like, all right, I saw the pick. I'm gonna go get some ice cream. Went to get some ice cream because it was a beautiful night out. And on my walk back, I had like my ice cream in one hand and then my phone's like blowing up in the other. Like my dad, some friends and family are calling me, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's the big deal? The Sixers already kind of wrapped up the game. The Eagles got their draft pick. What are you possibly calling me about? And they're like, we just got AJ Brown. And I was like, that was mind blowing to me, just because of all the talk, how he took the Titans out of their his Twitter bio, and then later on, there's Mike Rabel talked about how that he's not letting go of AJ Brown ever, and then sure enough, you see the video of Mike Rabel very pissed
Yeah.
off that he was traded away
Mhm.
for not for what, 2 draft picks for someone of AJ Brown's caliber who's that good. I can't believe that the Titans did that. It made zero sense to me. I get that the Titans got Robert Woods, but I don't get how you can get rid of somebody as good as AJ Brown. And the Eagles just gave him a lot of money. I think it's like $100 million for 4 years, something like that. But nonetheless, it's a lot of money for a great player, and I just hope Jalen Hurts can throw him the football. The Eagles
Yeah.
got a tight end, they got a center, they got Nakobe Dean, which you and I were talking about that. I can't believe that he fell to the 3rd round, which
Mhm.
was unbelievable. But I know he had some injuries, maybe some off field stuff as well. But probably one of the best draft classes and just trade acquisitions that the Eagles have done in a long time.
Yeah, I think so. For the Eagles, obviously this draft was a major win. I was the one, unfortunately, who broke the news in our apartment in New York about the AJ Brown trade. I could not believe my eyes. AJ Brown's probably one of my favorite young receivers, talents, players in this entire league. He goes to my most hated team possible. Um, they stole him, I think. They got him for the 18th pick, which ended up being used to draft his replacement, Treylon Burks, which is not the same, and I think a 3rd round pick as well. Um, the Titans make no sense. Like I don't understand their direction. They're a competing team. Why would you get rid of 24-year-old stud who's one of the best in the league? You pay that man. Like Christian Kirk got paid not much less than him. So I just thought that was a huge win for the Eagles and Howie Roseman.
They absolutely fleeced the Saints with that trade,
Absolutely.
as well as the Carson
Oh,
Wentz move
oh,
paid off for us with AJ
we'll
Brown
get in.
big time.
Yeah, we'll get into we'll get into the Saints because I actually broke it down later on in our show of exactly what they traded to end up trading up for Olave, which is a crazy amount. But yeah, going back to the Eagles, so the Eagles just like they got everything they needed. They got Fletcher Cox's replacement. I didn't love the pick there. I thought Jordan David, but they knew that the Ravens were going to take him, so they had to do that. They got a center. They had Jason Kelsey scouting for them, so they got his eventual successor.
Yeah, the only other person I think they would have taken if they didn't take Davis would have been Kyle Hamilton.
Right. That was also an interesting fall that Kyle also, I don't know, I just saw a thing on this. Kyle Hamilton wears number 14, went pick 14 and is wearing 14 again for the Ravens. Kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could have gotten maybe the steal of the draft, Nakobe Dean. We'll see. There are obviously a lot of injury concerns. He was taken off a lot of people's boards. There's a reason he was falling that far, but they could potentially have gotten the steal of the draft in a position of need. What I thought was so funny about the Eagles is how he finally figured out like he sucks at drafting receivers and he's a wizard at trades. So why not just combine the talents and trade for a receiver? And it worked out masterfully for them.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with this draft. They probably had one of the best drafts of any team, which absolutely I hate to say. And they also fleeced the Eagles, or sorry, the Saints. It's not even close. Another one. I guess moving on to my teams, the Giants. And I'll talk a little bit about them. I think they were arguably one of the biggest winners as well, especially from night one. Night one could not have fallen more perfectly for them, getting Kayvon Thibodeau and then having one of the two top tackles fall into their lap. And they got Evan Neal, who had some experience at right tackle as well. So they got two guys who were rated number one at different points. So I love that trade. Love Kayvon Thibodeau. I would hate him if he wasn't a Giant. Like he just kind of has that really cocky personality that you don't love unless he's on your team. And then Evan Neal, I'm just really excited for. We have two bookend tackles. O line has always been a problem, and Gettleman screwed us for years. So I really love this draft for them. I think that they may have reached on Wan'Dale Robinson, but they made two really good trades in order to move back for him. He's dynamic. What I thought was kind of crazy. So he's like 5'8". He's not the biggest guy by any means. He's definitely a gadget player. He's at Nebraska and then moved on to Kentucky his final year, where he played awesome. What's kind of interesting is some people think that there's a correlation between drafting him and maybe the Kadarius Toney news, that they'll kind of similar redundant players. Maybe they'll get rid of Kadarius Toney. I think it's that they just want more guys that can be used in motion. Like you think about the old Chiefs offense, the Bills offense. They had Isaiah McKenzie, Tyreek Hill moving within space and in the backfield. I think he's just super dynamic, and he also benched 19 reps of 225, which I thought was crazy for how small he is. It's insane. So I love this. I kind of came around on him. The other guys, they got some.
He's not someone you're throwing the ball up to in the end zone. Let's just leave it at that.
No, he's not.
He's your Tyreek Hill slant receiver, most likely.
Yeah. But I think that's a need. Like they were just ultimately the Giants did a great job in just upgrading the offensive line. They drafted 3 linemen in this draft, and we'll see. They drafted a tight end that's pretty solid, Daniel Bellinger, and I'm excited about these guys. I think it's finally a step in the right direction. And I love how also I trust Joe Shane, and I love that he purposefully leaked. We talked about it on our show last week that Charles Cross was being leaked everywhere, that he was going to be the Giants pick. And we found out that the reason he was leaked was to see if Chris Pettit, who's like the lead director of scouting for the Giants for years, if he would tell people. It got leaked everywhere over social media and all over the news outlets and everything. And he was fired yesterday morning, which was fantastic. Love that. So glad that this regime has full power. What did you think of the Giants draft?
I think the Giants did a really good job. Evan Neal was a great pick, assuming he's going to come back and be healthy. But that's kind of their main thing right there, is just getting protection for Daniel Jones, and you need to get protection for Saquon, but that's a much bigger issue with his health and him just being able to stay healthy. But they did a really good job, and Thibodeau is a beast. I wanted him to fall to the Eagles, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. So it was a snag, and Giants have a pretty exciting young core of defenders coming into the season. So hopefully they can try and make a step in the right direction come the season.
We'll have to see with Daniel Jones too and Saquon. These are obviously pivotal years for them both. I think that this O-line, and they don't have any more excuses. Like that's the ultimate end goal. Like the two top receivers didn't have a touchdown last year. They needed to upgrade the O-line for sure, give Daniel Jones a little bit of time, but now they can see what they have. And if he doesn't get the job done, that's okay. And then they have a really solid O-line, or they're working on it, in order to maybe draft a successor next year.
Yeah. So quickly, I wanted to talk about the better of the two teams that plays at MetLife. I think the Jets absolutely won this draft. They did a great job. Sauce Gardner with their fourth pick. If the Texans took Sauce, which I thought they were going to, they probably would have taken Stingley. Would have been my guess, but the Jets did a good job getting Sauce. I think he's going to be a great probably the best cornerback in my opinion coming out of this draft. Um, it was just great scouting, I think, by the Jets. And then at 11, at 10, they take Garrett Wilson. We expected Drake London to be the first wide receiver taken out of that draft. Garrett Wilson's very good. Not sure how much of an impact he's going to have because they just have a very young group of receivers right now. I don't know if they still have Corey Davis or not, but he's just getting old. He's just getting old, so they're kind of just building around Elijah Moore, hoping Denzel Mims can have a role in that offense. So we'll have to see with Garrett Wilson. And then the biggest surprise to me was that Jermaine Johnson fell to them all the way at what was their third pick, 26?
That made no sense.
Yeah, for him to fall to 26 didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I wouldn't have been surprised if the Birds took him instead of Jordan Davis, but
I thought they would.
Yeah, for him to fall that deep in the ladder of the first round was really surprising to me. And obviously another team, as I touched on, that's in the rebuilding process. I think they just absolutely got an A+ with their draft classes here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. They even got it's kind of interesting. They got arguably the top corner, arguably the top receiver, definitely the top running back, and Breece Hall, who they apparently were also going to be trying to trade back into the first round and grab him, get him at in the second round. It's just like they did such a masterful job. They got Jeremy Ruckert, who's a very solid like H-back tight end, really good player. I don't know. I mean, Joe Douglas just absolutely killed this draft. Jermaine Johnson is a stud. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the best edge rusher in this draft. I just couldn't praise him enough. I think Garrett Wilson's an absolute stud. Him and Elijah Moore will be pretty dependent on how good Zach Wilson can become, and but that team has gotten pretty damn good, and they still have holes, definitely, like especially on defense. But I mean, they're making a lot of steps in the right direction. Breece Hall in that zone scheme running.
Breece Hall as well,
man, that would be good. Another team I thought was a winner, the Ravens. The Ravens usually win the drafts. I feel like they are so good at, even when it was back with like Ozzie Newsome, trading up, trading back, whatever it is, like they always get so much value out of their picks. Like they got Jason Owe, Odafe Owe, whatever his actual name is. Yeah. Sorry if you're watching this, but you're probably not. He had 0 sacks in college and was incredible for them out of Penn State last year. This year they sit pretty, trade back. They got Kyle Hamilton falling in their laps, who's a perfect fit for that offense. They got David Ajabo in the second round again after trading back. Yeah. They got Tyler Linderbaum like after trading Marquise Brown, and obviously that's going to hit, but like they got
what do you make of that? They obviously got a really nice haul for Hollywood, but you saw right away Lamar was not happy, and they really, like, correct me if I'm wrong, they have no offense. Like Lamar's their whole offense, and obviously they have Mark Andrews, but depending on how J.K. Dobbins bounced back, they have no running game. They have nobody to throw the ball to. What are they? Sammy Watkins and
Sammy Watkins.
He's gone, right? And Rashad Bateman. So.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. I mean, I feel like Rashad Bateman is a first-round pick. We talked about him last week, but he was a first-round pick last year. He's an awesome talent. Didn't have a great rookie year. He was hurt a lot. Mark Andrews is definitely the number one in that offense, but I don't know. I could see them. They drafted another tight end too, so I could see them running a lot of like maybe even 3 tight end sets, 2 to 3 tight end sets, and just having
this might be a hot take, but the Ravens, who we talked about how they had a tale of 2 seasons.
Yeah,
they were the worst team in their division last year. They finished in last place in their division, and I won't be surprised if the same thing happens again this year.
Really.
With how good the Bengals are coming into this year. I think the Bengals will be just as good again, and I think the Browns are going to be very good with Deshaun Watson, and it's going to be between the Steelers and the Ravens for who's going to end up in last place in that division. But I just don't think the Ravens have a whole lot going for them this year.
I actually disagree with you. I think the Ravens are gonna do something. Like I have a feeling they're gonna sign some receiver.
They're gonna
Um,
have to go for Debo. That's their only chance.
they could get Jarvis. They could get
He's older.
yeah, but I feel like they don't really need much. Like yeah, Marquise Brown hurts, but if you really think about it, except for like the beginning part of last year, he really is disappointed throughout his career. Um,
Yeah, but think
and
about that though. He took off in the first half, and that's when they were at their best. He falls off in the second half of the season, and the Ravens fall off. Lamar got hurt, obviously,
Lamar was
but
hurt too. Yeah,
he needs weapons because the defenses have figured out what he does. They've learned to kind of contain him a little bit more from since his MVP season. So you could be right. They could be a good team this year, but I don't know. It just seems like things are not going their way.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. They made that trade for a reason, right? There was reports Hollywood has actually requested a trade the past 3 years, supposedly, which makes sense. He wasn't really a key point in that offense ever. Last year was the first time he really did anything, and they knew about this trade way before it was made official because Hollywood was already in Arizona uh at their draft party.
I have a
So
quick question for you.
yeah,
Do you think they made this move having any insight about what was going on with Hopkins?
yes, I definitely do. Um, I think they still would have made the trade, because it boosts their receiving core and like, I don't know, they're trying to surround Kyler, putting and make him happy, give him his old college buddy, like probably a good idea. But I do think they knew like they had to have known something was coming. I think because that's what ultimately makes you, go from like hesitant to like pulling the trigger on a deal like that. Um, they definitely, in my opinion, I think the Ravens easily won that deal. They got that pick, and then ultimately used it to get, bookend center for who's probably going to be an All Pro, similar to like a Marshall Yanda, who they've been struggling to replace since they lost him.
I wanted to address the Hopkins things really quickly because
Yeah.
it's kind of rubbing me the wrong way, and I wanted to get your opinion on it. So he gets suspended the first 6 games of the season for taking banned substances that he didn't know were banned. Whether
Yes.
that's true or not, he took substances that I don't even know what the reason is behind it. I want to say he probably didn't even need it because he's so talented already, but who knows? Maybe he did. Like those football players go through so much pain every year.
Yep.
You don't know what they're going through, so maybe they do need certain things. But I just found it weird that he gets suspended 6 games for taking banned substances that could help him, and then Calvin Ridley gets suspended a full
Yeah.
season for
Yeah.
betting. It just those two things don't seem to add up to me.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this. It was a little while ago. I think it was Golden Tate. I'd have to be fact checked on this, but it was definitely a Giants receiver at the time who got suspended. Same thing, PEDs.
I believe you're right.
But the PED was a fertility drug to try to help his wife get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't know it was in there. Once he knew, he immediately apologized. It's too late. And then you look at it's tough because like the comparison makes you actually like aggravated that
Mm-hmm.
Calvin Ridley gets suspended immediately a whole year. And they have guys like Kareem Hunt who only got 6 weeks. 6 weeks. It's just it really does rub you the wrong way. Like Tyreek Hill didn't get anything for his.
Yeah.
It's crazy. The NFL is a horrible place, truthfully. But yeah, the Hopkins news is troubling or not troubling. Sorry, it makes you think just because he's so I feel like by the book. He
Yeah.
even said in his tweet like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how this happened, but I'm gonna get to the bottom of it. They won't make a difference. Like he's still gonna get suspended the 6 games, but
Yeah.
um,
There.
that'll really hurt Kyler Murray. I think.
Yeah. It will big time. Um, there was one more team I wanted to talk about in the draft before we can move on to some of the losers of the draft, but I think the Chiefs did a really good job taking McDuffie and then Sky Moore
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of replace the absence of Tyreek Hill. And the
Yep.
biggest one to me is if you want to talk a little bit about if it's injury related, but how Justin Ross was not drafted kind of was very surprising to me.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting case. Justin Ross was the number one receiver recruit of that class. when he came out to Clemson. He was amazing his first year. He actually was better than T. Higgins when they played with Trevor Lawrence. The thing with Justin Ross is that, yeah, so like his injuries are really significant, and he sustained a neck injury that almost completely ruined his career, and was the same reason that he was taken off of probably almost every single person's board. It's wild to me because you have a lot of these guys who just are drafted to be drafted, and Justin Ross has so much potential upside if he's healthy. Like, of course he would go to the Chiefs of all places. Like, I feel like that's where all of these receivers go to potentially revive their careers. I really hope the best for Justin Ross. I just don't think like he didn't look the same since that injury.
Did he play with why am I blanking on his name? Hunter Renfrow and Watson.
I don't know if he played with Watson. He played with Hunter Renfrow. Hunter Renfrow's last year was Trevor Lawrence's freshman year, I'm pretty sure.
Gotcha.
And yeah, they were all incredible. I mean, think about it. Like, T. Higgins was overshadowed by Justin Ross. It's his freshman year. Like, and T. Higgins is a stud in the league. But look, that's just what happens sometimes, and it's really unfortunate. So much talent just kind of put to waste because of his injury. And a guy you also didn't mention, but I do think warrants getting thrown in there is George Karlaftis. They did a really good job. I thought the Chiefs in getting like guys who fit exactly what they need. They didn't reach. They just kind of and of course the draft just fell perfectly to them getting Sky Moore. Of course the draft falls perfectly. They get Trent McDuffie, who's an amazing corner. Of course they get Karlaftis, who is a projected top 15 pick not even a month ago, and now he's one of the last picks of the first round.
What are your thoughts on the Chiefs this year? Do you think they'll be just fine without the weapon and Tyreek Hill, or do you think they're kind of slowly deteriorating?
I think they're going to be fine. I think Andy Reid is too good of a coach for anything to happen. I think he'll just make a different scheme. He has a lot of different talent this year than he's ever had. Usually it's so focused and funneled to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, but now he's got Travis Kelce's obviously your first choice, but Sky Moore can do a lot of things. And then you have Sky Moore. I don't think Justin Ross will probably do much if he makes the roster, but you have Sky Moore, Juju, who was signed to basically nothing, and MVS, who was going to stretch the field for you and open up those, shallow crossers and other things that Kelce does so well. I think it's just going to be a different look Chiefs offense, but with one of the best offensive lines in the league. They got Rojo now, which is kind of an interesting piece. He's a really good runner. He just stinks at everything else. I think that is going to be a completely different look, but if there's anyone I trust, Andy Reid is going to get the job done.
Yeah, just one of the best coaches and combos with the best quarterback in the NFL. Easily. They should be just fine.
And so let's get to the losers. The first one I had to throw in there, the Packers offense. You could argue this isn't true. Christian Watson they traded up for in the second round out of North Dakota State. He's like a physical freak, but they lost so many. Like, Lazard is arguably the number one right now, and that is a scary thought because Rodgers loves guys, either loves you or hates you, and he needs to have guys who he has rapport with. So like if you think when they drafted Amari Rodgers, which was last year in the third round, I believe. Yeah. Nothing happened with him, right? He just didn't pass it to him. Yeah. Amari Rodgers was nothing. And you have guys who so they got Romeo Doubs, who's a really solid player. I think he got him in the fifth round. And Christian Watson in the second. And they might not even, who knows? They probably won't do anything. And they have Sammy Watkins. And they're still going to be ridiculously efficient is the maddening part.
Yeah, and because Aaron Rodgers is a beast, and their running game, they have one of the best running duos, and Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of who is Rodgers going to throw the ball to, and it's like if I'm them, I'm doing everything I can to try and get Deebo Samuel on the phone. But at the same time, look at the result of last year. They had Devontae Adams, and that wasn't enough for them to even put up a touchdown, I believe, against the 49ers. So I don't know if they have enough to be able to be a contending team this year, but they're going to be a playoff team. Aaron Rodgers, he's just so good. He finds a way to win. I don't even know when the last time was that he didn't make the playoffs, but
Yeah, I saw some crazy stat that like it was like 2.8% of all of his throws that he's ever had was an interception. Or like 1.8, something crazy like that. Also, I can't believe I called it that they wouldn't take a receiver in the first round. It just they never do it. They never do it. This is the year they maybe were thinking about it. There were rumors that they were going for Treylon Burks before that AJ Brown deal went.
Yeah,
but my God, like they are such a train wreck, and they're still going to be great, and it's infuriating. Okay, I mean we talked about this a little bit. Loser number 2 has to be the Cardinals, in my opinion. I'm even more so now that they lost DeAndre Hopkins. Kyler doesn't play very well without Hopkins as like a target hog and a guy he could always rely on. They drafted Trey McBride, who's like an interesting tight end in the second round. He's like fine. He's very athletic and probably the successor, but they just signed it doesn't really make not Travis Kelce. They just signed Zach Ertz to a 3-year deal. So
on top of the hundreds of millions of dollars that they gave to Christian Kirk.
Right. No. They lost Christian Kirk.
You're right. He went to the Jags, right?
Yeah, but they drafted Rondale Moore in the second round last year. He didn't do anything at Purdue. Marquise Brown.
They needed Marquise Brown, yeah.
They needed him. 100% they needed him. It's just, the Cardinals have not done well drafting receivers either. They've drafted Andy Isabella a few years ago, who was also a second-round pick. I believe he was out of UMass. That didn't work out. Rondale Moore maybe will work out, but it's not looking good so far. It's not a great supporting cast minus Hollywood. Maybe he'll regain some form again with Kyler. But for them to keep Kyler around, I mean, it's not looking great. And they still haven't come to a deal yet with him.
Yeah, it's not going to be good. They probably won't be a playoff team this year, but you never know. We'll just have to wait and see.
They were. I
don't know if James Conner is going to have another bounce back, another great year like he did last year, but Kyler's going to have to step it up, and he's just going to have to. Obviously, it's a no-brainer in terms of talking fantasy, taking Hollywood Brown because he's pretty much their offense right there. But
where do you take Hopkins? That's kind of like the Michael Thomas of this year.
Yeah, that was a different situation because he was injured. But yeah, I don't know. I remember very stupidly I took Michael Thomas I think in like the 8th round or something.
If you didn't, I was going to.
Yeah, but it was still early, and obviously he didn't play. So that's the thing about fantasy is that you got to take – if you want to win, you got to take guys who you know are going to play. You got to take guys who you know are going to produce. You can't take any risks because sometimes it's just not worth it, and you just got to pray that you get lucky and nobody gets hurt. That's kind of what it comes down to, in my opinion. So as good as Hopkins is, unless he's someone who falls to like the 14th round, which isn't going to happen, I'm not taking someone like him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is kind of one of those situations, and it's obviously different, but you got to wonder, like, is Hopkins finally declining? Like,
he had the worst year of his career last year. In terms of fantasy, he produced only because of touchdowns. But other than that, he had the worst year of his career. And he is getting older, obviously, with this most recent, suspension. It's just not looking good for him. But he's still so talented. He's still their wide receiver 1. So we will have to see.
So let's go to this just last. Actually, there's a few more losers that we've got here. The Saints are a really obvious one to me. Okay, so this is exactly what they ended up giving up for Chris Olave. And again, great job, Howie Roseman. They ended up paying so it was a number 98 pick, the 101, the number 120, a 2023 first, and a 2024 second. What that equated to, and I just found this, um, so to draft Chris Olave and Trevor Penning, the Saints gave up picks that amounted to A.J. Brown, Jahan Dotson, Brian Robinson, Sam Howell, Cole Turner, Kyron Johnson, 2023 first and 2024 second. That is a crazy amount to give up for the second best player on Ohio State's that came out in this year's receiving class.
Yeah.
That is a lot. And everyone thought there was a shot they were going to go QB. I was included in that. They did need a receiving help at the opposite side of Michael Thomas, and they definitely needed someone to replace Terran Armstead, who went to the Dolphins this offseason. But that's a lot to pay, and they must feel very confident in Jameis Winston's health if they're going to give up that much, including a 2023 first to the Eagles for these guys.
Yeah, you disagreed with me on this. You said you think the Saints will be fine, but I think they're just falling apart, and I don't think they're gonna be very good this year. I don't think they'll make the playoff. They didn't make the playoffs this past year, right? I don't think they'll. I don't think they did, but I don't think they'll make it again, just because you can't rely on Jameis Winston, in my opinion. Even if he's healthy, I just don't think he's good enough to lead a team to a Super Bowl. Alvin Kamara and all the off-field stuff he has going on, and I could be wrong with this, but it just kind of seems like he doesn't want to be there anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if Michael Thomas gets shipped off somewhere. They're just kind of deteriorating ever since Drudels left.
Drudels. I think they can't get rid of Michael Thomas anymore because of that. They gave up the 2023 first. Mm-hmm. They have no incentive to trade away any of their good players anymore because if they suck, then the Eagles are benefiting. Which doesn't help them out, obviously. And they're not in the same division, but they're both in the NFC. So we shall see on that one. Another couple I thought were huge losers of this draft in 2022 were Baker Mayfield and Jimmy Garoppolo. Both are still stuck on their current teams.
Yeah, they're gonna have to be backups.
I think Garoppolo, hot take. I think Garoppolo is gonna be the starter. I think he's going to supplant Trey Lance in camp and be the starter for the Niners.
Or they give Trey Lance the job, and if he, poops the bed,
doesn't get right back to him.
Going to be ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Baker Mayfield, that's a tough situation. The Seahawks didn't want him.
It's going to, I think it's just going to come down to a situation where that's Deshaun Watson's team now. So unless he gets hurt, Baker's going to be like, I'm too good to be a backup in this league, even though he's a better actor than he is quarterback.
True.
But I think that's gonna be how it plays out. If he doesn't get traded, he's gonna get to some point where he's just gonna be like, I don't want to be on this team anymore. I lost my starting job, which maybe that's not the right outlook. Kind of like what happened with Carson Wentz, but that could be, the way it goes is he just pulls the Carson Wentz and is like, I don't want to be in this locker room. I don't want to be on this team anymore. Just send me somewhere. And, quarterbacks get injured throughout the season. So there's going to be some opportunity where a team like the Panthers or maybe even the Jets need somebody.
I feel like the Baker Mayfield one is so crazy to me because he really has done amazing things for the Browns. Like, I don't like Baker, and I do think he's a much better actor than player. I agree with that. Objectively, though, he's an incredible player as a quarterback in a position that doesn't, it's really hard. And he got knocked for playing through an injury. And because his stats look terrible because of it, he was playing through a separated shoulder. And basically because of that, he ends up basically getting screwed over on the trade market. And the Browns, I'll pose an interesting question to you.
Please.
Sure, you're welcome. What do you think happens if Baker doesn't play when he was hurt? He doesn't have that terrible year. The last thing you'd be remembering about him, right, was when he took them to the playoffs, right? Do you think they still go for Deshaun Watson? Because I don't think they do.
I don't know how you don't. Like, it's an interesting question you pose because if Baker's, in his bag and he's doing his thing and and performing well. It's like how do you this might not be the best comparison, but I think kind of think back to when Kaepernick took the 49ers to the Super Bowl and how good Alex Smith was, and then he gets
Mhm.
hurt, and then they go with Kaepernick, and instead of going back to their stud quarterback, they stick with the guy who's playing and performing well. So not that that was the best comparison, but just kind of thinking how, like, if that doesn't if Baker, doesn't go through all that and he's playing really well, you stick with the guy who's doing well. So maybe you're right. Maybe they don't go with Watson, but at the same time, with how good Watson has been, even in his last year when he was on such a terrible team and he was one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league with
Yeah,
what
he
he was
led the league
able
in
to
passing.
do, it's a business at the end of the day. So it could have gone either way. I think it wouldn't have been a no brainer. It would have been a tough decision for the Browns to make, but
Mhm.
that would have had to live with either result. And everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. What do you think happens with Garoppolo? Do you actually think he's not gonna get traded?
I think I think he's going to stay at the 49ers. I think there are a lot of teams that could use him, but if nobody's willing to, take a chance unless they're in dire need of a quarterback, um, I don't see why he wouldn't stay there. They're still a great football team, um, and even though Jimmy G wants to be a starter, he might be he might have to be a little bit more mature about it and
Yeah.
just be like, this is a good thing for me, and if I lose my job and Trey Lance balls out and is able to lead this team to the playoffs, then you know what? Good for him. But
Mhm.
this is his first year as a starter, so maybe that could be the mindset that Garoppolo has is there's a very good chance that I start this season,
Yeah. So
especially if
let's
they
just
keep Debo.
yeah. Well, we'll have to see how that situation unfolds. Supposedly, the last thing I saw is he still wants to be traded.
Mhm.
Let's kind of roll through these last two.
Please.
I think, sure, the Vikings were, I thought, one of the weirdest draft day traders like probably I've ever seen. That they kept trading within their division, like division rivals, and they traded. So first they traded down 20 spots with the Lions so the Lions could come up and take Jamison Williams. And they didn't even get that much in return, which, at the time of the deal, I was like, wow, the Lions fleeced them. And
Yeah.
Jamison Williams could turn into a hell of a player. So I really like Jamison Williams. And for the Vikings to do that to themselves was just really weird. And it's not like the Vikings didn't have a good draft. They still got Lewis Seen, who I think is a really good player.
Hmm.
But then they did it again, and they traded with the Packers, so the Packers could get Christian Watson. And I'm sitting here like, what the hell are they thinking? Like, I mean, sure, the Eagles and the Cowboys traded once last year, but not twice in a row to two different division rivals to get receivers. I just thought it was really weird, and they didn't really get much back for either of those two trades.
Yeah. I texted my friend who's a big Vikings fan, and I was like, at the last pick in the first round, I really wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings took Malik Willis,
Mm,
just because they gave Captain Kirk one more year, and this is kind of his make or break year as well. Like, if he does great things for them and can lead them back to the playoffs, he'll get another contract. But if he
absolutely,
can't and he stinks the bed, they're getting rid of him. So they need another quarterback. So I was surprised they didn't go with Malik Willis, but
me too.
Lewis
Especially
isn't a bad pick either, though.
especially after last year when obviously he's not the coach anymore, but Stefanski, no, sorry, not Stefanski. Who was their coach? Um, I'm forgetting his name. I'm drawing a blank on the Vikings' old coach.
I see his face, and I see his face. I just can't think of it.
Stefanski was on that staff actually. That's why I thought of him. Whatever his name is. I know you're gonna look it up right now,
I'm
but
looking it up. I'm so curious.
he outwardly said after they drafted a quarterback in the third round that he basically doesn't like him and he didn't think he was good last year. So
Mike Zimmer.
Mike Zimmer, right? Stefanski was on the same staff. That's why I thought that he's on the Browns. But anyway, so yeah, so I just think back to that pick and how much he just hated their secondary quarterback. Look, Captain Kirk's pretty solid, and anyway, so like let's move on. So Two, two.
I just wanted to say real quickly, going through the
Yeah.
entire draft, I
Mhm.
feel like most years the most players that come out of one team is Alabama, but this first round was just swarmed with Georgia players. There
Oh
was
yeah.
at least 6 players taken in the first round out of Georgia.
You also had like Georgia's secondary players who were drafted to be starters, like Quay Walker for the Packers was
Mhm.
he was not a first stringer for that team. He led the team in tackles, which is impressive as a second stringer behind guys like why am I blanking on their names now? N'Kobe Dean.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do agree. Georgia's defense. That's why they won. It was certainly not the
Yeah.
offensive side of the ball. So a couple more losers, and then we can move on to some dynasty talk real quick. The Bears, very curious draft. They did not do one thing to help Justin Fields. I don't think they drafted an O lineman, and they didn't draft a receiver until the 5th round, where they grabbed Velus Jones, who is a 25-year-old rookie, will be a 25-year-old rookie. I'm so confused by this team.
Yeah, I mean they didn't even have a first round pick, so it was hard for them to get a stud player, but yeah, they're just they're just I just kind of remember all the talk shows I've listened to over the years and the people that just kind of shit on the Bears being a bad team, and I guess
Yeah.
they got rightfully so, they got their quarterback in Justin Fields, but
Mhm.
they lose their not that he did jack for them, but they lose their star receiver in Allen Robinson. Um, Really, your only offense at this point is David Montgomery. Darnell Mooney's a stud, but like I can't trust like someone like him and on such a bad team.
No.
Khalil Mack's got to come back healthy again, but
Khalil Mack is on. Oh
oh,
yeah.
you're
No,
right.
no,
Khalil
Khalil
Mack's
Mack's
on
on
the
the Chargers.
Chargers. He's on the Chargers, so
Yeah.
he's gone, and it's just like what does this team have left? Nothing. I'll answer that question. Nothing. They're going
Oh,
to be a
damn
bad
it.
team this year.
They have nothing.
Yeah.
What a they drafted a bunch of defense. I don't know. Ryan Poles, the new GM, really needs to figure it out because this is maybe he's just tanking so they can get Jackson Smith and Jigba next year. But this is disgusting. Oh my god, this team is so bad.
I
Um,
forgot that the Chargers got Khalil Mack.
and J.C. Jackson.
They're gonna be so good.
Well, J.C. Jackson leads us to the last honorable mention loser. The Patriots had such a weird draft.
Hmm.
So weird. Bill Belichick thinking he's smarter than everyone. I feel so bad for that first guard that was taken, Cole Strange, out of what is it, Chattanooga.
Yeah,
Um,
positive.
and do you see them video with Sean McVay and
Yeah,
Sean McVay
they were
laughing?
like, what?
They're
We
like,
looked at this guy in the 6th round.
they're like, I thought we would get him in the 3rd round. I don't know that you have to feel terrible if you're his family.
Yeah.
On such a happy day, the Rams are just making fun of you. Um, No, I mean, look, they did that, which was kind of curious, and then the really weird one was they drafted Tyquan Thornton in the 2nd round over many other very good receivers, and
Hmm.
that one was so weird because yes, Tyquan Thornton for about 30 seconds set the record at the 40-yard dash before they corrected it, but he was he was a nobody at Baylor. Like he's a Baylor receiver who's just a speed guy. So it's just
Yeah.
really weird that they just replaced Demir Bird. Like that was how I looked at it.
I don't think we give Mac Jones enough credit for him almost winning Rookie of the Year last year.
Totally agree.
How good he was and how he led that team to the playoffs. Like it's another team that doesn't really have many offensive weapons. Not really. They have like 3 running backs, but it's not a reliable um, running core back there.
They drafted 2 more running backs.
Yeah, so it just doesn't make sense.
I
But
forgot about that. Yeah, they drafted 2 more running backs, and Damian Harris, who's been great, is in a
yeah,
contract year. And they drafted Ramondre Stevenson the 4th round. I think the
yeah,
4th round of last year or 7th, one of the two. Two very different rounds. Anyway, our last topic, and we thank you for listening to us if you're still with us right now. Let's get into a little bit of dynasty. A lot of
yeah.
dynasty rookie drafts are starting up right now.
Yeah,
They
let's wrap
usually,
this up with a little fantasy talk, Jay. I know you made this list here of about 15 players or so. So
Mhm.
if you want to do this, how about you just kind of go through the players you think and let's talk about them through a dynasty perspective, because you have dynasty drafts for people who do dynasty leagues and they do their rookie draft, but also in redraft leagues, if you think there's any players who,
Mhm.
could stand out this year, because really, when you think about the past years with Najee Harris,
Yep.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Saquon from long ago, there really isn't anybody in this draft who you're like, wow, they're going to be a top 5 pick in fantasy. But if you just
Yeah.
want to go through what you think.
So something that's the reason for that, I think, is because usually the two things that you really need to succeed, obviously, or three things: talent, draft capital, and then one of the most important is situations. And Najee Harris, for example, first round draft capital, amazing at Bama, goes to the Steelers, who will run the crap out of the ball. Like, of course, he was a first round pick. I think the unquestioned first pick in all dynasty formats. So Superflex is the one that we run, and some other people don't run. They run one quarterback leagues, whatever. Brees Hall is going to be the unquestioned number one pick in probably every single draft. Brees Hall out of Iowa State.
Mm-hmm.
He scored a touchdown in every single game this past year. He's an absolute stud. He tested like a freak, which I didn't expect. I did not think he would run a sub 4.4 40, but he's got crazy speed. And he's also a very good pass catcher. I think the issue is he's with the Jets, and Michael Carter played pretty well last year. But Michael Carter is going to be the second running back right behind him, I think, almost immediately. Brees Hall is so much better than him. It's not even close. And the draft capital speaks for itself. So they'll use him. That's what I think is definitely consensus number one.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. In a redraft league, I don't know if he would be anything more than a flex play, but depending on how well he does, he could slide into RB2 numbers.
Yeah, I think in a redraft league, you probably can't pick a guy like that where its situation's so unknown before maybe the 5th round, or like 3rd or 5th round. I feel like that's probably a sweet spot.
Especially in the Jets offense that just isn't reliable. You can't,
exactly.
Like I said, you can't take guys who. That's why I don't love touching rookies and younger guys, because you can't take guys who you don't know how well they're going to perform. It's always best just to take guys who, obviously, you have to take some chances, but taking guys who are just going to produce for you.
Absolutely.
Especially because our running backs are so valuable.
Number two, so two I think could go multitude of ways, and it'll kind of go like however really you look at it. A lot of people will probably have Kenneth Walker go number 2, who went to Seattle. Another really, really, really talented running back. He is not a pass catcher, which is going to hurt him really bad. Yeah. But good for him. He went to Seattle. Situation. He went to a situation where they don't throw the ball to the running back anyway, and they're not going to be a very high scoring team because Drew Lock is leading them.
So what? First down they handed off to Chris Carson. Second down they handed off to Rashad Penny. Third down they handed off to Kenneth Walker. Is that pretty much what's going to happen?
Would you be surprised? Travis Homer's on 4th down. I don't know. DJ Dallas on 5th.
Oh my God, I forgot they have DJ Dallas too. I drafted him, and he's been nothing but a waste of space.
Yeah. That's kind of how they view him, clearly. It was a really curious pick for a team that has a lot more needs than just running back. But whatever. So, I don't think he'll necessarily do amazing this year. I think you're kind of drafting, hoping that next year, when they draft they'll probably be really terrible, and they'll draft a good quarterback, and they'll hopefully not have Rashad Penny and Chris Carson there.
Yeah, pretty much the core of this draft is wide receivers, and that's kind of what it's going to come down to, at least in the first round for dynasty leagues like ours.
Mm-hmm. So it'll kind of depend. I mean, Kenneth Walker is definitely a stash, but he reminds me of a J.K. Dobbins, but Dobbins went to such a talented offense, so I don't know. I personally would probably go receiver here, and it's the same thing. It's kind of like a whatever your flavor is. I feel like there's a lot of different kinds of talent here. The three that are immediate that stick out to me are Drake London, who went to the Falcons. There's Garrett Wilson, who's also a Jet, and then Treylon Burks, who went to the Titans. And they're all very different kinds of receivers, and I think you can have them in whatever order you like. In my opinion, I probably have Drake London first, I think the Falcons are quickest to become a passing offense because their defense is so bad.
The problem with them though is they don't really have a quarterback. Like Marcus Mariota, if he is
Mhm.
the starter come week 1, I don't know how good him or Kyle Pitts will be. So it's like even that's
Yeah.
like at least in a redraft league, that's a risk. But in a
It's a risk.
dynasty league, it's a good stash because I think Drake London has such a big upside. But
Mhm.
looking at these receivers too, like you said, Garrett Wilson was a good pick. But
I think if
you
you're
know,
looking, oh, sorry to interrupt you.
I was just gonna say we don't know
Mm.
how good Zach Wilson will be in his second year,
Yeah,
so we just kind of have to wait and see. I know I talked about how in our last episode how much I liked Chris Olave, but I don't know how good he's going to be with Jameis Winston and the Saints struggling. I thought the best receiver in this draft class personally is Jamison Williams, even though he's coming off an injury. I think he's going to be very good in Detroit.
I think that. Yeah, I really like Jameson Williams. It's another one where it's like maybe Goff will be good for him. I mean, Goff was better than every quarterback in this draft, no question. But it'll be kind of interesting to see if next year they draft a receiver, or sorry, if they draft a quarterback next year. You're probably also taking most of these guys. You're probably taking like two stash. The one I think you can kind of look at it like that actually. So like in a dynasty, you take guys for their upside, not for like immediate production.
Yeah,
In a redraft, it's immediate production, and in a redraft league, you're taking Treylon Burks. You know it's going to be funneled to him and maybe Austin Hooper
yeah.
when there are passing situations because they'll just run it to Derrick Henry every play.
Reverse handoff to Bobby Trees.
Oh yeah, well he's hurt too, so he's not even going to be involved probably immediately.
Yeah.
Sky Moore, I could see probably having immediate production. Christian Watson's kind of like that's a really high ceiling and the lowest floor possible.
What are your
If you
thoughts
guys
on
like
John Mechie going to the Texans? Do you think he's someone who has a lot of upside?
That's a good question. I think for more of a PPR format, he could be solid. He's an underneath kind of guy for who racks up receptions in the slot. He's also coming off the ACL tear. I don't hate it. To me, he's like a second round pick. I think who got screwed was Jahan Dotson on landing spot. He's not gonna even like Terry's getting the lion's share of that offense. It's not even close. Jahan Dotson is very talented, but they have guys for that.
I wanted to address the quarterback situation because last year Trevor Lawrence was most likely the consensus #1 in dynasty drafts, and he wasn't very good this past year. But it's in a dynasty; it's building for the future. So,
Yeah.
do you think Kenny Pickett could be a top 5 pick?
I think he'll be. So I think he'll be 5 or 6. I can tell you that it'll be based on who's drafting. If someone who needs a quarterback really needs a quarterback, Kenny Pickett is the only guy who's going to be in that tier. I would take him if all things were equal. I'd probably take him number 6 after Brees Hall, Kenneth Walker, London, Wilson, and Treylon Burks in some order. I'd take him before. Maybe I'd take Jameson Williams. I don't know. The thing is, Jameson Williams, you're banking that he's going to come back from that tear of the ACL and be amazing eventually on a terrible Lions team. Usually, quarterbacks retain a ton of value. Usually. And if anyone's going to make someone good, it's Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
I really do believe that. And they have so many good pass catchers. Deontay, Claypool, who hilariously and basically when he announced the draft pick for the Steelers, it was basically the replacement for him was George Pickens. I thought that was so funny. He plays the exact same position.
Also, it was just such a weak quarterback draft class. That's the problem with Dynasty.
Mm-hmm. Do you see George Pickens, the video of when he watched himself get drafted?
I did not.
Oh my God, it's so funny. He's like hunched. He's like this. It's so funny.
Stay Pickens.
Stay relentless. So anyway, yeah. So it's interesting because if Malik Willis got the draft capital, I would say he'd probably be a top 3 pick, no question. with the rushing upside. But without the draft capital, there's no team investment. There's no reason for them to keep him per se. I can't trust that. He probably will go end of second round. You know, it's an interesting pick, though. James Cook. James Cook ends up with the Bills. Super dynamic pass catcher. They tried to sign J.D. McKissick, who signed with them and then didn't. They're not going to be using him in the run game, but they also don't use a run game often. What do you think of James Cook going to maybe the best situation with the Bills?
Yeah, I think he's like you mentioned Dobbins earlier when he went to the Ravens. He's kind of in that same ballpark of someone who is going to a very good team. He's going to be utilized. Obviously, they have Diggs and is downtown John Brown still on their team? I believe he got traded, right?
Downtown John Brown got released, and then no one picked him up. I think it was the Raiders first, and then no one picked him up.
Okay. Well, you know, they have Knox and they have Diggs, and obviously their crazy backfield with Singletary and Zach Moss and all that going on. So I think he's a smart pick to take.
It's kind of interesting that they took 2 third-round running backs in a row.
Yeah,
both basically failed, and then they took a second-round running back to be a third-down pass catcher.
The Bills just love running backs. They stampede ahead.
It's kind of funny. So let's see. What's an interesting one on here? Oh, here's a good one. Where do you take Dameon Pierce? So Dameon Pierce is like kind of an interesting player. He didn't really do a ton at he was great. Obviously, like all these prospects are good, but like at Florida, he was like okay. I didn't think he was that impressive. He's not that fast, but he sits atop probably number 1 or 2 on the Texans depth chart of running backs.
Yeah, they're another team that just has so many running backs to choose from. But he was pretty good at Florida, and there was a lot of I think hype around him coming into the draft, just being a potential sleeper pick. So I liked him. I don't know if he's someone who's really gonna. I don't know if he'll ever be a pro baller, but just kind of looking at the here and now and taking a risk on someone. In Dynasty, at least, he's an easy second round pick in my opinion.
I think this is the first year in a long time that if I have a second round pick, if I can trade it for a next year's second round pick, I will do that immediately.
Yeah.
Probably until 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably like 108, and then I'm pretty much out. I don't think I don't think there's really anything special. Christian Watson is like, I will gladly let someone else take him.
Yeah.
Scott Moore is really solid. He's probably the last player I'd really want. Jahan Dotson on the Commanders, I don't need.
I feel like this draft just kind of falls off after the second round. But yeah, before we wrap this epi up, I put one more player out there for the long run. I think you mentioned Treylon Burks, but somebody else would be Malik Willis, in my opinion, just because of the the short term. Who knows how long Ryan Tannehill has left? So if the prospects are right and Malik Willis backs up all the talk that was surrounded around him, it could be a good pick for the future.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, he has all the tools to be amazing in fantasy. It's just
you're a tool.
So. All right. Well, this has been episode 18 of the JumpStart Sports Show. Really appreciate all of you. If you wouldn't mind commenting, and subscribing. We'll have a lot more content coming out with some NBA stuff as well. The NBA, wow, the NFL is going to be a little like bleak for a little bit here, huh?
Yeah, it usually is around the summertime until training camp starts up.
So we'll have to find something to talk about. Maybe we'll just play like tic-tac-toe on here for you.
Yeah, we could play checkers or something.
I stink at checkers.
All right, JumpStart Sports.